Hello, hello, everyone. Good morning. We are just going to give it a couple of seconds so folks can log in. I know it takes a couple of moments to get us transitioned over into the webinar. Well, if this is your first time joining us, hello, my name is Sadie Uribe, and I'm the media producer for the Los Angeles Regional SBDC. The SBDC is a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country, helping to stimulate economic growth through business advising and development. The LASBDC offers no-cost services through funding provided by the U.S. Small Business Administration, SBA, and from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. It's your tax dollars at work. The Los Angeles Regional SBDC network operates 7 service locations throughout Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. Our services are also offered virtually. We are here to help. We empower small business owners by offering tailored solutions through personalized one-on-one business advising, cutting edge workshops, and comprehensive programs, all provided at no cost. We are dedicating to supporting your entrepreneurial journey every step of the way. All right, Lori, I think today is going to be an exciting day. It's going to be like, I call it the day of reckoning, is what I call it. It's the day of reckoning.
Oh, that is hilarious, Sadie, and we're going to understand what that means. By the way, Sadie, actually, I think you could wake up, not have your coffee or anything, and give that whole beginning in your sleep at this point. Would that be a true statement? I think you got it nailed.
100%. Like, I mean, I even know if I'm like a comma is coming up, where I'm like, take a breath. It's where you take the breath, Sadie.
That's hilarious. That's when you know your intro. You know when a comma is coming up. That's going to be the words for today. Okay, with no further ado, we got a lot going on, so let's get started today. Here we go. Okay, here is my long list of webinars. I got a couple announcements. Last couple weeks, I've said to you guys, I don't know if the cash flow model is coming back again. I kind of let everybody know. A lot of people jumped into the last one. I thought I wasn't sure, but guess what? Lo and behold, the cash flow model webinar is back. So this is a shout out to the Pasadena SBDC who is sponsoring the cash flow model going forward, which I'm very excited to stay on the calendar. It's a relatively new one. Like I said, I gave it a try and it's got a lot of people signing up. And I cannot tell you how important it is to fully understand how to create the models for the different questions. Am I profitable? Do I have cash flow coming up? And this will keep you from doing one of those like panic and back into those loans that I don't like you guys taking out because the interest rate is ridiculous and they don't tell you what it is. Okay, so that's my lineup. And I should do a shout out to Long Beach SBDC as well because they've been the sponsor for some time of the accounting and CFO series. And Pasadena is the sponsor of the sole prop and the sales tax. There is credit where credit due to all those great locations that make this possible. Okay, next week we got Simon coming up. We got so many fun things, like I said, coming up in October, and I'm starting November. So Simon was a referral to Emma. Shout out to Emma, one of our favorites on the show, Emma Green. And Simon is a coach that Emma had used, and she's talked about him over the years and said how great he was. I was like, Emma, who is this secret coach you got? We want to meet him. So he's going to be coming on next week. I love the title of his program, Wealth and Wellness Program. And we're going to have our money expert, our relationship with money expert coming on. I'll be telling you that later. Those who've been watching the show for a long time, you might remember that. But that's all I'm going to tell you. Spoiler alert, got to stay with me to find out what it is. John Gaines is coming back on Moving Minds. He was on, I don't even know, guys. It could be a year ago. I've had several requests to have him back on the show. He's got some updates on his programs that he offers and what's happening within his company. So that'll be fun. Samara, as you know, is my HR specialist, comes on a lot. I wanted Samara to come on, and we mentioned this the last couple times she was on, but I wanted her to delve into this requirement in the state of California for a contract, a specific contract with some terms in it to be created when you're working with an independent contractor. Of course, we can't go without talking about AB5. Can you even hire an independent contractor? But now there's a contract requirement. Now, some of you may be familiar, it was a requirement in LA City for a while. It's been adopted on a state level. I don't hear anybody talking about it too much. So I asked Samara, let's come on, let's talk about this, let's get some details. As you know, I'm always trying to create an awareness because you never know if something's going to happen without having one of these contracts in place. Okay, Lori's corner for this month is going to be kind of announcements. I've got a couple announcements that I've been asked to make through SBA and our partners, etc. So I won't be dropping the perils of wisdom upon you as much as I usually do, but don't worry, I'll sneak them in there. So I have to say to any Chris, if Chris is out there, Chris R, I won't say the last name, Chris R, you got to put my words of wisdom in there. It has to do with buying something. So you'll have to put it in the chat as my words of wisdom as I'm speaking on all these other things. Okay, guys, here's the announcement today. The idle loan for the wildfires and straight line winds disaster, the deadline to apply is fast approaching. It's October 8th. Now, this isn't the deadline to get funding. If you're in the middle of a process and you haven't been funded yet, don't freak out. I know you guys do that. They say, oh my God, if I don't get funded by 8th, I'm not. No, that's not true. It's not a deadline for funding. It is a deadline for applying. Now, this specific loan is in for those who were affected, and it goes from Los Angeles all the way to Kern, Orange, San Bernardino, and Ventura. Sadie just put a link into the chat, and I want to show that link where it's going to take you on my screen. And the reason I'm bringing this up, guys, and you can see it's the economic injury loan. There may be a few out there. I've had run into a few people that weren't aware that this would apply to them because their house didn't burn down or some situation where they weren't directly exposed to the fire itself. But this actually goes beyond that area. So it's a shout out to anybody that may be in this area. You can go here and this will show you what areas if you can apply, and then you can click here and apply. My words of wisdom right now on this is to log into the portal and apply through there. The other thing is, if you have any questions on this, I've got my actual email in there. Sadie put my actual email in there so people can get to me quick if needed, because you do have a deadline coming up. So if you need any help seeing if you can apply or applying this, just do a shout out to me and we'll get you on the calendar to go over that. So that is the announcements for today. And with no further ado, let's get into the exciting thing we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about QuickBooks. I am so excited to have Brad Yochum, is the president of QBcure LLC. And Brad, I didn't say your last name before or your company, so you're going to have to correct me when I'm done if I said anything wrong. I forgot to ask you that. But his company provides QuickBooks accounting and bookkeeping services to serve the needs of small to medium-sized businesses. Business of this size typically have sales in the range of 500,000 to 25 million in annual revenue and between 2 to 49 employees. Now, his company serves a broad range of industries, and this is what made me really interested in having Brad on the show today, because he has extensive knowledge of QuickBooks applications. Whenever you have extensive knowledge, that means you know what works, what doesn't work, mistakes people are making, problems they're running into. And so it's a good opportunity to just get an all-around feel about what you're seeing on a daily basis. Welcome to the show, Brad. Did I say your name? Say your name right, so I probably messed it up.
It's okay. Nobody ever gets the last name. It's Yochum.
Yochum. Okay. I realized when I started talking, I was like, I always ask how to say the last name, and I did it. And QB, you use the words QB in your company name. How do you say that?
Yeah, it's just QBcure. So
Okay, I thought
QB
so.
like QuickBooks, QBcure.
I figured that was, but I didn't want to make any assumptions. We know the first three letters on that. So, Brad, before we get into what's happening, this is a show about entrepreneurship, and you are an entrepreneur as well. You started the company. And I always like to ask these questions because it always leads down fascinating pathways. So, when you were going to school and you knew what you were going to be, did you know that you loved numbers? QuickBooks didn't exist then, so I don't think it existed then. So you didn't say, I think I'm going to be a QuickBooks certified expert. I'm assuming that topic didn't come up, but was it numbers and finances? That's where you thought you were going to go?
Well, the funny thing was I didn't like accounting when I went through school. I majored in finance because I did like the numbers. But after college, I got a job as a controller and
Ah,
kind of revisited my accounting courses and retook a couple because it was directly applicable to my job.
right.
And that's when I got more and more into accounting, and then thought having a finance and an MBA in accounting kind of complemented each other. So that's how, definitely did not think I'd be running an accounting firm at the time.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is we don't know each other. We've never met before, which is really cool about our conversations today. But you and I have such similar backgrounds in education type wise. I've got the MBA, the focus on finance, and then, the tax preparation and stuff. So we come from kind of that same world. Although I did not even intend to go down any roads I did, but that's not what we're here to talk about. One of the things that I can't let go from what you just said, because you said a word that is one of my favorite words to explain, and this will launch where we're going. So she's thinking, where is she going to go with this? Because I'm going to come back and talk about your company, but I'm going to grab this word for a second. When I teach my CFO series, the first thing I do is talk about the different, we could call them titles, we can call them disciplines. I use the word activities that are in corporation, in the accounting departments in corporations. And the reason I do this is to show them the holes that exist in the way they're running their, let's call it accounting department in their small business. There is a word that you said that is so important and people are completely missing it, and it's the word controller. Most small companies don't even know that there's a controller activity, someone who's actually looking at all the different aspects. So I think that's fascinating that you actually operated in that position that I keep telling people that exist and existed and exist, that they don't even have a consciousness about it. I'll let you
Sure.
just comment on controller before we jump into your, tell the audience, what is a controller and why is it an important task?
Well, for small businesses beyond, there's fractional CFOs, there's part-time CFOs, but really for small businesses, having a controller type of position or background expertise is managing the inflows and the outflows of the organization. That's in a nutshell. I mean, it can expand from there, but the controller will handle all the finances, the budget, the strategic part. Many times the CFO will get more into that, but the controller is your day-to-day finance person.
Yep, yep.
And
And the controller is the one who's looking at the reports to make sure the data entry is correct. And that's the part that is completely missing. So awesome. I just had to jump into that. So how long ago did you start your company and what prompted you to do so?
well, what prompted me was a little inspiration and desperation.
I see those words as well. That's hilarious. I think
I,
we're best friends. Oh my God. I think I started my first company out of inspiration and desperation. We're best friends. I love Brad. Oh my God. He's my long lost best friend. I didn't know. Sorry, keep going.
I started it 9 years ago, and short story was my son was 11 at the time. He's 20, and I had started a business long time before that, sold it, bought a business back 20 years ago. It failed miserably, and for 10 years, I was back into the corporate world, and I was scared. I was scared of trying to start something back up again. What if I fail? What if I do something wrong? And my son, 9 years ago, he was in an urgent care, just had a high fever, but he was on the doctor's kind of the bed in the room. He's just laying down at a high fever. And literally in that moment, I said, I want to do something. I want to create something that he's proud of.
Wow. I
And
got
then,
goosebumps, Brad.
and that was it. That was the he was my inspiration. And I was desperate because my wife knew at times I wasn't satisfied working for somebody else. She knew I was going to do something back. Um, and that night I started writing out a business plan and then just kept on going from there.
You know what's interesting that strikes me with your story, and this is so true of the human character. We always think it's the worst fear is to try something. I think sometimes the worst fear is to try something after we failed, but that's actually the best time to try something because then we have experience and understanding. Isn't it a weird situation in that?
Yeah, your mind gets the best of you.
Oh my
And
God.
it's actually, those failures are actually still are teachable moments that I still hold near and dear
Yeah.
even today that I've learned. But at the time, when you're in the middle of that failure, that's the last thing you're thinking about is, life lessons and teaching
Yes.
experience. You just want to run for the hills. But you get that exposure and that knowledge over time.
So 9 years ago, a lot to me in 9 years has changed within the accounting for smaller companies, being more of a demand, being different QuickBook models, being all kinds of changes. It seems like it's really been fast forwarded in that time period. Just in general, what was the company's first focus? And although it may be still that primary focus, what changes have you seen in the external, the software, as well as the clients and their needs? I know that's a huge question, but I think it's a fascinating one to ask from your perspective.
Well, it's a really good question because in the beginning, when I started 9 years ago, it was more desktop applications,
Yeah.
QuickBooks. I had QuickBooks knowledge and experience before, so I knew there was a need for that, no doubt. There's other software companies out there, but QuickBooks owns the small business market,
Yep, they do.
at least here. I can't tell you in other states, but certainly in California, they own the market. So I knew that was the industry I wanted to be in. And at the time, it was more desktop applications. Well, now fast forward 9 years, everybody's moving to online. QuickBooks is pushing everybody to move to the online version for a number of reasons. And so the need for experience and expertise, I think, has even increased. Companies realize that they, as an owner of, let's say, a construction company or of a software company, they can't know everything. They want to do what they do best and then outsource the things that they're not necessarily competent with. And finance and accounting is always a hot topic. And business owners know that information is really important and they want it. So I think they're reaching out more than ever. And AI, we kind of touched on that earlier before the webinar. AI is not going to solve everybody's, life's issues. It's a tool and it's a resource. It's still developing. It's like a kid right now. It's still growing. It's still unfolding, and it will always still be a tool or a resource. But the thing that clients need or wanting is that human component. They want to be able to reach out to us or reach out to someone and say, "Hey, I got some questions. Can you help me?" And that's where the relationship side of it won't change.
I am so excited. It's like I'm in the audience with the questions because this is fascinating, different directions to go on this. One of the things that you commented about QuickBooks owning the space of the small company, and I'm going back, 10, 15 years ago, where QuickBooks was the only software in that price point that resembled somewhat of the true accounting systems, like I said, Peachtree and Sage that the bigger companies had. So suddenly QuickBooks gave that option, desktop specifically, right? And
Right.
slowly, from my banking background, banks started accepting QuickBooks reports, knowing it's not got the checks and balances, but it's better than, just some ledgers that they would got. So QuickBooks started to have a comfort within even the banking from a loaning perspective, right? And please, I'm going to make a couple notes as I continue with this. One is, don't agree with me if it's not. I know you won't, because there's a lot of this is my statements, and I'm really going to be fascinated in getting your input. And also for the audience, I realized there was a sentence I wanted to say is that one of the reasons that Sadie said a reckoning, and one of the reasons I wanted Brad to come on, you guys have heard me speak about Dahlia. Dahlia, somebody that comes on that's a bookkeeper that's really well knowledgeable, accounting background. We talk about a lot, and as well as Clarissa, that a lot of the QuickBooks specialists don't even have an accounting background. So when I first got a referral to Brad, I reached out and I was like, okay, here is somebody with a complete background in finance that's also a QuickBooks specialist. This is going to be a fascinating discussion because it can be about where do I fit in as a small company in the using of the software and getting assistance, right? So those are sentences I should have said first. Now I'd like to go back to finish that sentence. It has to do with Brad when QuickBooks changed from their desktop to their online version. And I am talking about what I'm saying from just like this is a question I always wanted to ask somebody else, and I could be completely wrong because I'm looking at it from a far distance, okay?
Yeah.
I was comfortable with the checks and balance of QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, right? I felt like it was sturdy. It was, I knew what it didn't do and I knew what it did, right? When the QuickBooks Online, and I know it's changed, it's gotten better, but when it first was introduced, I saw it like a little toy piano that wasn't acceptable for most of the companies because even if you're selling things at the farmer's market, you may have all these things like a POS system, etc. Then I started seeing QuickBooks pushing people to online, marketing, money, I got it. But I always felt like that was not totally respectful to the lacking knowledge small business that didn't know what they were missing with the original system. And I would say, Brad, that's when got my own private war with QuickBooks, is when they started pushing to the online. I think I haven't recovered from that war with them totally. So, any comments on that from Lori? You're crazy or no? And I know it's improved, but I first want to get this understanding in the audience of what QuickBooks Desktop was, who used it, not necessarily the business owners, but the professionals that understood in translation to what online has become from your perspective.
Well, I actually like the look and the feel of the desktop version better than the online. It was a little more intuitive, but the programmers at QuickBooks at Intuit, they couldn't replicate or duplicate the look and the feel of the desktop onto a true cloud version. So that's why when people look at desktop and they look at the cloud, it's almost as if two different departments, started that software, which I think in many senses that's the case. You touched on the security. QuickBooks Online is just as good, and it has been for a while in terms of closing dates. You can put in closing dates, so you can't change that information. There's the users putting in the different user permissions and roles of each user. That's gotten better. In terms of the security and the ease of use, that's incredibly easier. Now you no longer have to make sure that your server and your desktop computers at work are all up to date. As long as you have a secure internet, fast browser, you can access your information anytime, anywhere. And that's all for us, that's all we specialize in now. For the beginning years, we did do both. We did do desktop and online. But
Right.
as the last couple of years have shown, that QuickBooks right now, their last full edition is 2024. They're not going to come out with desktop 25, 26, 27. They will, fix bugs and releases within the 24 version, but they're not putting out full versions. So, that's you see where that's going.
Yep.
And we only now do online 100%. We don't do any other software. We do migrations from desktop to QuickBooks Online. So, all of that information that you had in your desktop can get transferred over to the online, so you don't lose any of that history or that detailed information. You can pick up, QuickBooks wants you to go over to the online. Obviously, they're pushing that. And I know QuickBooks has gotten into, they're becoming this kind of massive beast. They're involved in banking.
Yeah.
If you need a loan against your AR, they'll do that. They're in a lot of different areas, from credit reporting to mail, advertising campaigns that you want to run. They're buying out smaller organizations that they think will kind of be united within their main source. And then, going back, our background in education, we ironically get a lot of business from dissatisfied clients that said, hey, I had a bookkeeper and an accountant do our stuff and they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't mess it up, or, they messed it up completely. And I don't know how to unravel it. Can you help?
Right.
And so we get that business more often than you realize from people that are not experts. And we try to stay within a very focused niche, meaning we only do QuickBooks, and that's our software that we use. We don't try to be all things to all people. So I hope that answers most.
It does. And when the desktop was starting to not be updated and I saw it coming, and this is where I'm asking the question about online, because I don't use QuickBooks or online. I jumped ship. I did. I went to zero, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not doing accounting for anybody else, just for me. But so I'm glad to hear that the online has come up with more of the controls, because like I said, I'm talking from history because I'm not in it every day. I think a couple things that you said was interesting. So I'm once again old history. When I first saw people migrating from the desktop to the online, they would call QuickBooks Direct and they would say, oh, basically push a couple buttons, and it ended up being a nightmare. So can we talk about, because there may be some people that have a QuickBooks desktop and then also throw in any other software, or maybe they have to start the QuickBooks, and I'm giving you three things here, Brad, but you'll know what I'm speaking by this. They have to start the QuickBooks midstream into the existence of the company, thereby going on the tax returns and picking up the balance sheet accounts and putting it into QuickBooks. So I talked about three different things: coming from another piece of software, coming into QuickBooks from the desktop, and starting a QuickBooks when your company's already in existence. Why I spoke of all those three is when I look at the client's documents, especially if they're going for loans, their balance sheet was never inputted correctly and they don't even know about it. And a lot of the accounting and bookkeeping people don't know about it. So let's talk about migration, starting QuickBooks clean, starting QuickBooks from another place. And then when we get there, I'm going to come back into the unraveling part. But let's talk about what's required to get a nice, pretty, right, clean start in QuickBooks, no matter where you came from.
Well, the kind of the three scenarios you mentioned, one, they're using desktop and they want to migrate to QuickBooks Online. In fact, I met with a client last week to kind of look at their desktop client just to make sure that they are a good candidate for that transfer. Not all desktop clients are going to migrate successfully or easily.
Okay.
Inventory can be a caveat that can kind of be yeah, got to be careful with that. There's a couple little things that you want to just double check, but ideally moving from desktop to online is the easiest. Now, if you're going from another software, have it be, whatever that software is, we typically don't do that software if it's coming from another. There are companies that will do that. The reason we don't is because then we got to try to be experts in migrations of, 4 or 5 different companies. And for us, 90% of our situations that come up as a proposal are QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online. So that's in our wheelhouse. We can do that. And then the ones that say are starting midstream, mid-year, and their balance sheet wasn't correct. The goal for us is to get the tax return last year. Good, wrong, or good, bad, or indifferent. That tax return is what's been filed. That's our starting point. We can always make the adjustments, make any updates, corrections in the current year, but that's our beginning point, is that balance sheet that's from the tax return. Then we can enter those in if the QuickBooks Online is a fresh company. And so we start with that, and then we connect the bank and the credit cards and download that information. If it's, if you're starting July 1st and you need 6 months of data that you got to catch up on, we'll connect the bank and the credit cards, download those transactions, categorize them, make sure everything's caught up. And then if that balance sheet is incorrect for whatever reason, we can get with the CPA. And we always are a strong advisor to talk with their CPA. We talk with them many times. We want to be on the same page.
Yep.
We want to help the CPA because we don't do tax returns, but we want to help the CPA. And the CPA, once they know what we do, we're not, we're trying to actually help them, and they love us because we make their job easier at the end of the year. But we want to make sure everything that we're doing is, all three of us are on the same page.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent information. So shout out to the audience. Now, many of you, when you just heard what Brad said, you might be like, I didn't even follow half of it, which is good. It's good in the fact that it's something I wanted to have you guys experience. I followed everything Brad said, and Brad, you're dead on with everything, every single thing you said. And why I wanted you guys to hear this is to be aware that just starting QuickBooks midstream needs to have someone that understands your tax return, understands accounting, and can put the data in correct. Brad, I bring this up because I can't tell you, I always say this and it's a shocking thing to say. I look through the SBDC at a lot of people's files, you know, because I'm looking at their numbers. I pull up the balance sheet. I'm not going into their data. We don't do that at the SBDC, but I can look at a balance sheet and I can see something's terribly wrong here, right? Do you
Right.
know that this is a scary, it's Lori's own opinion, Lori's own fake percentage, okay? But about 80% of the files I look at with my SBDC clients are wrong. Yeah, it's scary stuff. It's their balance sheets and everything. And what happens is, as you know, even not being a banker, you know this, if you suddenly submit these directly to the bank goes, okay, that's scary. I don't trust any of your numbers. And it's going to influence the ability for you to get a loan. So this is why I speak on it so much. So I really appreciate that you explain from a high level all the steps you have to do to get an awareness to our small businesses that QuickBooks isn't this push a button and it all magically happens perfectly without your interaction. And I'm going to say this too, Brad, I'm going to throw this back at you. And sorry, but I'm going to say this. Not all QuickBooks certified people have accounting backgrounds. I found you to be a rare bird. Like I said, I'm in love with you having the background and the things you're doing for your clients because I found the opposite to be true. So comment for me, help my audience understand three things. I'm on a roll for three. One, why I said that it's not just this push a button and it magically happens, even though they're being sold on it. You can do it on your phone and you're gonna, that little advertisement with the smiles and stuff, right? Drives me up a wall. Number two, why QuickBooks certified people don't necessarily have accounting background. They don't go to school. Why that's not a requirement, not from their policy, but the fact that it's not. And most importantly, when somebody interviews a bookkeeper, what questions should they be asking? Okay, here you go,
Ooh.
Brad. Whoa, back to you. Big stuff. I'm going to shut up and let you go.
Well, I don't, it's interesting. I'm going to the QuickBooks conference the end of this month in Vegas. And so I'm going to be among a lot of pro advisors, QuickBooks pro advisors. And I think you're right. I think a lot of them don't necessarily have an accounting background. They're coming from all over. And the truth to be told, to get certified in QuickBooks isn't that hard. They should make it harder. And for us, like the people working for me, we all have accounting degrees or we have an extremely strong accounting background. And I have a phone call with a client today at 1, and he's trying to look for a bookkeeper. And he's asking me this afternoon, what questions do I need to ask? How do I know that this person is, saying what they're saying on their resume? And you could ask them, 3 debit and credit questions. Nothing's crazy.
Yep.
Just, hey, if I enter an invoice, what's the typical debit and credit? That the invoice is going to be paid later. It's not going to be paid right away. And if you enter in a vendor bill that you're going to be paying later, what's the debit? What's the credit? And those, I mean, typically, and then you can ask them another debit and credit. Again, nothing super, sophisticated, but some basic debit and credit questions. Just 3 or 4 of those questions are going to weed out probably 80% of your applicants, my guess.
Okay, I just gotta say that's brilliant, Brad. I didn't want to interrupt you, but that is friggin' brilliant. I have never heard such a brilliant answer to that question I've asked.
It's simple.
You don't even have to really, guys, you don't even have to know the answer. Just notice the response when you ask the question. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I hope I didn't ruin your train of thought, but that was friggin' brilliant. Keep going.
And again, different levels of positioning is going to require a different level of expertise. But when you're hiring somebody, you want to do a background check. You want to check the business references. I don't care about personal references. I want to know about business references that
Right.
people say, oh yes, I worked for this person for X amount of years. And there's an old saying, you want to hire slow and fire fast.
Yes. Yes.
And take your time, because that person is going to consume a lot of your time and energy, especially in the beginning. And if it's not the right person, then you're going to have to do this all over again. So you want to take your time in the hiring, do your due diligence, and the basic debit and credit questions. When I had to do that with one of our staff, when I was looking at hiring a couple of years ago, I'd say 85% of them didn't know the answers. So to Lori's point, a lot of them out there don't know, they put themselves out as pro advisors, but that doesn't mean they have an accounting background. it doesn't mean much, unfortunately.
Yeah,
They
so
just,
true.
they know some basics around the software, but they don't know what's happening behind the scenes in the software. That's where the accounting, everybody can create an invoice, but what does that mean? When you create an invoice, what's the debit and the credit? What's happening behind the scenes?
Behind the scenes is such a key word because what I always say, what they really are, many of these people are technology experts. They know how to use the technology. They don't understand the behind the scenes accounting aspects.
You
So
gotta have
that's
both.
so crucial. Okay, so I just have to do a shout out because I saw something. I glance every once in a while in chat, and this was so friggin' funny. I cannot stop to do a shout out. Tara, probably good advice for dating too. Asking about the debits and credit, and that's hilarious. And it reminds me when I was a banker, we always say, well, you need 3 years financials and 3 years, right? And I was talking with one of my friends' young daughters that started dating, and they were like, do you have any advice on dating? I go, yeah, ask for 3 years financials and no, I'm sorry. That was just too friggin' funny. I couldn't let that go without being a huge laugh because I think it is sound dating advice. So true. But where we're going to is what you're saying is ingenious. Once again, I love the debits and credits, but what we're starting to do is identify and understand, and awareness, one of my biggest words, is that there is a difference in the bookkeeping individual and their understanding, and it matters. So what I'm doing is I'm taking away the bookkeeping process that has been desensitized to where it's almost like a process of going into Starbucks and buying a latte. You just think you can go in any Starbucks, you buy a latte, it's going to taste the same. It doesn't really matter, but it does. The bookkeeping aspects actually do matter. And I have kind of given up on saying, okay, why are these companies, I call it, because it's more of an emotional word, but they're preying on the small companies that don't know to ask the questions like you and I do. But to me, okay, that's commerce, that's capitalism. I'm a support of it. Companies can come in and go as they desire. It's upon us, the business owners, and us as the experts to provide this information to teach discernment. So I think just unraveling and going, wow, Brad said a whole lot just about a few things. Maybe there's more to it. It's the awareness of it. I want to go into the unraveling part, and as you called it, which is a good word. When, once again, at the SBDC, we don't touch people's data, we only advise. So when I get to a situation where I can see, and I'm speaking in your language, I can see that the bank accounts are negative, you got these old AR on it, you got this AP, it's not matching the tax return, they didn't zero out the accounts at the end of the year, and all that kind of crazy stuff. I can see it immediately, but
Yeah.
then the business owner has to have an awareness, and they have to get it fixed. That unraveling, in my personal opinion, can't be done with the person who created it, that same bookkeeper, right? You can't go back to them to unravel it, right? And so
Yeah.
I find it very challenging. I only have a few people that I can even refer this individual to, because most people don't know how to unravel because they have to understand the accounting aspects plus the technology aspects. And I can't even unravel because I can tell them from a CFO accounting, I can't tell them from the technology. So for our audience, explain what unraveling, we're going to use this word, why do people get to the need to unravel? What does it involve? And also that maybe some people that use desktop or do use the QuickBooks, I meant to say, can pull up a balance sheet and do their own personal inspection after this show and take a look at their balance sheet, which they commonly do not. That was a lot, once again, Brad, throwing it your way.
Well, we get a lot of phone calls from clients, business owners that say, I know something's wrong. I don't know how to fix it. I'm busy, running this business. I know, my current bookkeeper doesn't know what they did, how to unravel it, to your point, and we need it fixed. And you were talking about earlier, if you submit bad information to the banker,
Yep.
that banker is going to get some red flags right off the bat, and you may not get a second chance or a third chance at submitting that application when they see, junk. The owners knows they'll look at their P&L and their balance sheet. They're going to know, because they're intimately involved in their own business, that something's wrong. And they'll then go to their staff accountant or their bookkeeper and say, hey, something's the matter here and I need this fixed. that person may not have the experience or the expertise how to unravel and clean this up. That's when we get involved, because it kind of puts them on the spot that maybe they started something that they don't know how to fix. And again, it's they don't have the experience or the expertise. They might know the software, but they don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And knowing the accounting side of it and behind the scenes is what's going to help unravel whatever issue they may be experiencing. I had a client the other day that, bookkeeper's been there for 30 years, and we looked at the books and it's a mess. And she, it was her system, right, wrong. She just only created it 30 years ago and been doing this all along, but it's going to take some unraveling, and she's way above her depth to understand what we're trying to communicate with her and say, this is what we're going to be doing. But how it was created is incorrect, and it's because it's this. So we'll see how that unraveling goes. But at the end of the day, the owners need to have that financial visibility. They may not always agree with the numbers, meaning they might not like the numbers, but they need to see them so they can make sure that the numbers are correct and they can make some informed decisions. And the first thing is getting those numbers dialed in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of what you said that I've made my little notes to comment on. Where I get that I end up seeing these numbers is because people are getting prepared to go for a bank loan. We do look at people's internal documents and help in the loan packaging through SBDC. Also, I was and still am the one of the top experts within the SBDC area that I service on the SBA disaster loans, including the COVID loans, right? So obviously, I'm seeing a ton of financials, payroll accounts with the PPP and tax returns, tons, more than one would even see in private practice because of my wide breadth through the SBDC, right? So in that's where I am aware of all of these issues coming up where things are not syncing. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is this word intimately involved with their financials because they understand their numbers. And I use that exact same word. And when people tell me, well, I can't look at my reports, I can't tell, I don't have that background, while it's true, they can look at things and suspect. They have enough of an intimate involvement. Like I had somebody who they put a grant of for 30,000 in income, and he's telling me, well, we didn't have any income, and I'm like, but you had this 30,000. There's like, I didn't get 30,000 in income. I go, well, what is this? And then I find out, well, it was even transferred to the tax return. So I always tell people, look at the numbers because you still can get some kind of an idea. So I think you're dead on that intimate. And you're right, when it comes to the bank loans, this is when these things come into play, and you have to start looking at it.
And we put together a whole financial package at the end of each month that we send out to all of our clients. And it's not just numbers, it's actually highly impactful graphs. So people are more visual than they are numeric. They can understand stuff, and we can even go over the basics. I'm not saying you're going to be a CPA at the end of the course, but they got to understand the basics of their numbers.
Yeah.
And the package provides kind of a starting point of understanding what those numbers look like. And again, those visual impact reports are much easier to dissect and interpret for most people because they get the visual.
Yeah. And you know what I think is one of the saddest parts about small companies and their numbers? And it took me a long time to go up the food chain in my understanding because I started my first company at 25 was a marketing company. I hated numbers. I didn't do well in math. I mean, I don't come from a finance background in that capacity, right? And what I realized when I got up the food chain was like, okay, I'm laying awake at night worried and I'm waking up worried of all these questions. Am I my expenses correct? Am I going to go under? Am I charging enough? And here I had this set of numbers sitting here that's going, ask me. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're a process. I file a form and I put it in a cabinet. You have nothing to do with me, right? So, but that's really what goes on. And so people are not even using this data, let's just call it data, to help them understand what's going on and decision making. And I always say, from my experiences of going all the way banking, investment banking, it was really easy to lose other people's money. Okay, that doesn't hurt. But small companies are losing their their money, their kids' college education. They need to know these numbers more than ever. So I think another good test of your bookkeeper, are they giving you reports? Are they communicating with you on what the numbers mean, what they're seeing? And this is where I don't see the bookkeepers engaged at this at all. And I want to add one more part. The other thing I'm seeing, a scary thing coming up a lot more, and Brad, tell me if you're seeing this, where there's companies that are coming in that are just these big organizations that have a bunch of, I think, freelancer, independent contractor bookkeepers, and you buy into the company and then they assign you somebody. So they're even further removed. They're really making it like a process, and they're just taking on hundreds and hundreds of clients and running them through software without even looking at the numbers. So comments on anything I said, Brad?
Well, I think the software, again, kind of like AI, it's a tool, it's a resource, and it can definitely be beneficial, but it's taking that end product and being able to communicate and discuss that with your clients. A lot of times the bookkeepers aren't going to be the one necessarily talking about the numbers and what do they mean. That's where a part-time, fractional controller, CFO will come in and take those numbers that were generated and then be able to communicate with the owner of what's happening or what's not happening. But without it, we have a lot of clients that were just kind of running, just kind of making it up as they go along, kind of putting their thumb up in the air, testing the weather and seeing where they're at. And even one I had to talk with 2 weeks ago, he's saying, I can't do this anymore. I can't put my thumb in the air and I gotta have some numbers to give me some guidance and let me know where I'm going or where I'm heading.
Yep. And thanks for the clarity, because you're right. The CFO is going to analyze them. I'm just saying, and I wasn't clear, that the bookkeeper's at least asking questions. What is this new invoice? What is this? Does this make sense? Does this,
Asking questions at any level is great.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Because what and where I was going with that, and I wasn't clear, is that they set up, and I'll let you comment on this. They set up the categories without checking and just let it. I'm going to use the word auto populate. It's not the proper word in the QuickBooks software world, but you know what I'm saying. And they're not even looking to confirm that each of the connections from the bank account based on the category is correct, or not even saying, well, what is this number? This is something new. So can you just comment on, explain to the audience what I'm talking about, why the human has to look at these transactions? And I'm going to say the words wrong, but you'll know what I'm saying. A lot of the bookkeepers I talk to, they say, I just turn that auto stuff off. It downloads, but I go through each transaction. So I'm kind of saying enough to explain what my question is, but you take it and put it in clear terms of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the auto feed feature in QuickBooks right now, can be more problematic than it can solve things.
I'm hearing.
Where people think, oh, I'll just put it on auto feed and everything that gets downloaded into QuickBooks from the bank will automatically be categorized. And then trying to kind of reclassify stuff, it's always better to get it right the first time. And that auto feed isn't always perfect. It's not always correct, and it can create more issues, especially when, let's say, you've reconciled the month and now you want to go back and change something. People can get that really messed up.
Yeah.
The undeposited funds in QuickBooks, really understanding that. There's some great YouTube videos on undeposited funds, but those are issues that we see as from our end that are a big issue with QuickBooks or with the users. And QuickBooks right now is literally changing their whole kind of interface. Half of our clients are on the new interface, half of them are on the old. QuickBooks is kind of like acts as a wave. It does it over a gradual period of time. And some of these new features are great. Some of them are not so good. Some of them shouldn't have never been touched. And then you got AI thrown into it. So there's a lot going on within QuickBooks that still the dust hasn't settled. So we're navigating that right now, just the same with our clients.
Delia, who's our bookkeeping expert, has been on the show many times. She was telling me about that, and she was saying that a lot of these new auto feeds are actually creating a lot of issues, which kind of goes into my next aspect to speak on, and that is the need for certain adjusting journal entries, and it's just required. And so you have to basically understand this. So let me tell you where I'm going, Brad. That's the headline.
Okay.
It seems to me that although it does mean that when you get to certain size revenue, certain size employees, it's like you have to outsource to a bookkeeper that knows what they're doing. You should anyway, but that's when you definitely have to. That's a given. But it seems to me what creates more of the necessity on what level you need to be at in understanding having the person with the knowledge doing your bookkeeping is what kind of transactions you're involved in. And this is what I'm speaking of. Like, for example, Cal Savers in California, that's become a complicated bookkeeping session because you got to do the adjusting journal entries. And if you don't know how to do it, it can be a nightmare. I also have people that I want to talk about a little bit and get into detail on these cash merchant advances, where the amount that is owed and the unknown interest is taken from the sales account before the money's deposited into the bank account. So what you're really, when you hook up the bank account, you're not showing total revenue. You're underestimating revenue to the IRS. Okay. So these are two special accounting adjustments, and they can impact the person who's selling at the farmer's market suddenly. So it's not even so much size or revenue, it's what type of complications does your business model have by default of the way it's acting in the world, taking out a cash, having an employee. So here's my big throwing at you again. Can you comment on those two specific situations if you have an awareness? And are you seeing clients have problems with this as well? Because I'm seeing revenue being underreported constantly to the IRS on this. And the secondary thing is just this concept that there is adjusting journal entries that the novice would not even know needs to be made, that is not talked about when QuickBooks tells you how simple it is. Huge subjects again, Brad. Can I throw that all at you?
Sure, we'll take the last one first. The cash advance, or I had a client in the past factoring, they're
Oh,
invoicing.
yep,
So
yep.
QuickBooks even has that availability. They'll loan you money and take out a percentage. Yes, that's an accounting nightmare, meaning that they underreport their revenue because they're only showing the net rather than
Yep,
the true gross and
yep.
subtracting out the fees correctly. The long term on factoring, this is my thought, is if you're using that as a regular business model, then you got other issues. I always look at factoring and borrowing money as a short-term instrument to help you in the pinch. But if that's part of your regular daily ongoing business practices, I think you got to revisit your business model. Because if you always have to if you can't even wait 30 days to get the money, and you always have to constantly borrow, then there are other solutions behind that. And then the other thing with the Cal Savers and the adjusting journal entries, we have a couple that are doing the Cal Savers. And I have a client that they use adjusting journal entries when they have to accrue payroll. And you
Right.
reverse it out the beginning of the month, you accrue it at the end of the previous month. Yes, it's an easy thing to do, but it's an easy thing if you don't know what you're doing to screw up.
Totally.
Because that does require an understanding of debits and credits and what's happening, and making sure that both sides of that transaction is getting cleared out and recorded correctly. So that's more, we've tell clients, their day-to-day person that they have, we'll tell them, hey, this is the transaction, this is why we're doing it. We'll give them the actual transaction to do each month, and we'll explain why, what happens in the end result. We've found with a lot of things, it's better to not only tell the people, okay, this is what you guys need to do, but explain why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that way the bookkeeper or the staff person has an understanding, like, oh, okay, they're telling me to do this, but this is the reasons why. I see that. And so a lot, like we will limit the journal entries as much as possible. That example I gave the other day with this client that's been there for 30 years, she's using journal entries as a everyday course of
No.
business. And it's crazy. Had never seen the amount of journal entries that she's doing, and she's doing kind of everything manually. So we limit the journal entries because it doesn't give you really a good transactional history. It's not tied to anything. So we try to limit those as much as possible. Of course, at the end of the year, the CPA is going to have their adjusting journal entries with depreciation and interest and that sort of stuff. That's fine. But I really limit the day-to-day transactional history, doing transactions using journal entries.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And you know where I come from is I have this concern. You can tell me whether you think it's valid or what in your opinion. And once again, I'm talking about the smaller companies that are doing it themselves or hiring just somebody online that doesn't even have an accounting background. And what I mean by the perfect storm, it's getting more complicated from a government regulation. You know, you've got Cal Savers with its adjustments, you got these loans that are, like you said, are doing the net, and then you've got the 1099Ks that are being mandated that's going to be sent from places like Vimo that are checking on things as low as 600. So that is going to pick up a underestimated revenue just with a computer click, right? So I feel as though you've got these companies that are saying it's simpler, it's getting simpler, it's simpler, but the government's going the other way. And the government, as you know, the IRS doesn't care. You're responsible and it has to be accurate. So I just have concerns with my small business crew that they're going to be getting into situations going forward if they don't get off this bandwagon of accepting this statement that it's so mandatory and mandated. And that's what, you know, we're that's what behind the scenes we were talking about. You were giving excellent advice. That was my like overarching theme, that I think people have to wake up and really look into their complexity. Because like I said, it's not about revenue. Saying I'm a small company, it doesn't matter. I got an employee, I got Cal Savers, and I've got a loan. All of a sudden, you're not by transaction a small company. So words of wisdom to the small business on anything I said. I'm just going to leave it very open on that, Brad. And even if you're kind of like, no, Lori, you're creating something that's not there. So please, you know, like I said, these are just my opinions.
No, it's a very crazy world where you got one side saying, "Oh, press a button, everything's solved," and then the other side, from a from a government regulation standpoint, it's getting vastly more complicated. And the old saying CYA, really, you really have to not you got to really be aware and not. It's your business, and you can't put your head in the sand and just say, "Oh, it doesn't affect me," or it's not gonna impact me. If you own a business in California, as we all know, it's highly regulated, and there are a lot of eyes looking at you from the sales tax, from an IRS, from EDD, from, a number of different eyes kind of looking at your business, that you just want to make sure you're aware and fixing whatever needs to be fixed. That's all.
Yep, exactly. And you know, I also say, you know, it's funny. I've been making this analogy, which is a really strange analogy. I have like in my head put together using software, QuickBooks we're talking about here, is like driving a car, right? Anybody can do it, okay, but you still have to pass a certain rules to be able to do it, and you have to have an awareness about it and a consciousness. And so I think what I'm saying is I'm not okay, nobody should ever drive a car that's, you know, young kid. No, no, we're allowed, you know, younger people to drive cars, right? But they have to have a certain knowledge of what kind of trouble you can get into. So I think the smallest person can do their own file, but they have to have an awareness and be wanting to take the time to learn about their unique situations and journal entries. Maybe they don't need to know about cash advances because they don't do them, but it's kind of like saying, this is coming into my backyard. I'm driving on a freeway. I never did that. I'm driving in the country, different rules. If almost like be aware and start learning. And if you take it on yourself, have a responsibility for it. If you don't, make sure the person you're handing it to has the capability. Ooh, I like that. If you're taking it on yourself, have responsibility. If you're handing it off, make sure that person has capability. I'm into bumper stickers today. I'll pass that to you, Brad, because I feel like I just upped my words of wisdom. I have nothing left to say.
I don't know if I can have that catchy slogan bumper sticker, but you guys partner with Score. Well, Score is full of mentors that are giving back, that can help business owners, and it's free resource.
Yep, just like SBDC. Yep, absolutely.
I mean, that people, there's wealth of information on YouTube, but more specifically, when you're looking for people, your organization, Lori and Score, there's a ton of people that you just have to tap, and they're there to help you. I view Score. I'm involved with them quite a bit, and
Awesome.
it's a wonderful organization. So I've gotten great advice myself from Score professionals.
Wonderful. Great statement on that. And I think that, and first of all, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I'm probably going to bother you to come back on again because this is too exciting to have somebody that understands this. So here's my final statements, which is almost a paragraph here. So one of the things I think is that our small business community is completely capable of taking this on with full responsibility and finding somebody with full capability. It's just they didn't have an awareness because they've been told it's so simple. So my purpose all the time is if I can just shake them and go, wake up, look, no, this is real, have some discernment, and then they can get it under control in a way that serves them best. And that's what I love about what we've done is another level of awareness. Now, guys, you got exposed to an expert. This is an expert from the finance background to the controller to the accounting to the QuickBooks technology. I don't even know the QuickBooks technology. We had a true expert come on today, and you could see how complicated the things are. So hopefully that created awareness. And I say on a positive note, Brad, is I have said this for some time, but I really do believe this in my heart and soul. There's no better time than now to be an entrepreneur. I started the game, many years ago, and it was so much more challenging to get access to information. I would have had to hire a expert to do things that would have been cost prohibited. I could start something at no cost in my house now. I mean, it's a fantastic time to be an entrepreneur, but we have to go back and still pick up the basic fundamentals of the tax, the legal, the law, the marketing, all these that the corporations do because they're still a fundamental part of our life. We take and we combine that intellect and understanding and awareness on what it really takes to succeed in business with the flexibility and the agility of a small company that they can exist today. And we're unstoppable, but we have to be responsible or find people that are capable. So I'm going to pass it to you for any last words to the audience with a complete thank you for coming on and giving us the opportunity to have this discussion.
Hey, Lori, I got to admit, you're the most lively accounting, financial person I've had as a host. So I've had a great time.
Well, I'm going to end this. I heard this so many years ago, and this is so funny. So how do you know if your CPA has a personality?
What? How?
Okay, you ready for this? This is
I'll
my
bite.
today. They look at your shoes rather than their own.
Oh, geez. We got such a bad rap. See, this is why my background. My office. See, I have, show some personality. It doesn't matter if you're not a Steelers fan, but to show, if you saw the rest of my office, you'd be like, you've never seen an office quite like this. But we have personalities, so
It's good. Like I always say, if I can't have fun, I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. Otherwise, if you're going to be down here in this world of craziness, you got to be able to friggin' laugh, even at numbers, okay?
life's too short. I
It,
gotta smile and laugh a little more, always.
you do. Well, thank you again. I'm going to bring Sadie back on. And as always, oh, I got a CPA. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Oh my God, I just laughed hysterically during this like highly technical conversation. But guys, I do that all the time. So Sadie is coming back on. Keep in
I
mind,
know
Sadie
it's
is
Steelers.
going to make sure that this stays alive for a while so you can get out Brad's information. I see the Steelers there. Sadie, was this not fascinating?
I mean, you guys crack me up. Like literally, this is where I'm just like, yes, I'm like, information can be fun if you have great people doing it.
That's our other bumper sticker, Sadie. We're into bumper stickers. Sadie's got one now. Information can be fun.
Where's your
Yes.
business model? You could be the Forrest Gump of bumper stickers.
Yes. I got a new title now, Sadie.
I love it.
I'm
That's your new
always
signature.
I know I'm always making these statements like Chris knows. Chris is there. What is my favorite saying about buying milk? Chris, you can get it into the chat before we end. Chris is going to write my favorite statement about buying milk while I say goodbye to everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, frequent flyers, for coming here every single week. Thank you to the new people on the show. You see, this is fun. This is fun. This is a great place to learn. So, Brad, thanks again. Sadie's going to be staying out. Get all the information. Get in touch with me. If you got any questions on getting in that EIDL loan application, reach out to me. Give me a shout. And I am going to end it with saying thank you for watching Small Biz Talk with your host, Lori Williams. And I will see everybody next week. Bye, everybody. Bye,
Bye.
Brad.
All righty, guys. So I will be here, so don't worry. I'm just going to put some stuff back in the chat because we had a little bit of activity going on in there. But if you need anything specifically you do not see, let me know and I'll post that back up there for you. But just go ahead, click, launch, do your things. I'll be here.